Hi, everybody. Welcome to this super exciting kickoff event for Legal Impact, Industry Issues Today and Tomorrow, brought to you by Silverstein Legal. I'm Dr. Chantel Tibbles, and I'm going to be your host for today's event, which is Section 230. Why aren't we talking about it more? And to get us started, let's hear a little bit from everyone's favorite attorney, the person who is the foremost expert of legal things in everything adult entertainment, Corey D. Silverstein.
I don't exactly know what a legal thing is, but it sounds like one hell of something. I'm not exactly sure what it is. But thank you, everyone who's here today watching this live. And of course, thank everyone who is watching this later on, whether it be by video or whether you're watching it on XBiz TV or on adult.law or any of the other different mediums that this is going to be available on. So I'm so happy that we're doing this today.
And we just want to take a quick moment to say thank you, since you mentioned XBiz TV, to say thank you to our exclusive media sponsor, XBiz. Thank you, XBiz. This is super awesome. We're very excited. And we also wanted to take a second to say hi and thank you to Brad Mitchell, who is the owner of Mojo Host and is sponsoring this specific event. Hi, it's so nice to see you. Thank you so much for sponsoring this event.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. So excited to be supporting Corey with Legal Impact. And, you know, he's my trusted friend and Mojo's trusted attorney since the very beginning of time when he passed the bar. And so I recommend to everybody out there, if you need an attorney, Corey's should definitely be your trusted source for good business advice. So then thank you everyone else on the panel for participating today. The more we can educate everyone in the adult entertainment industry, the better for all of us as a community.
Thanks so much, Brad. You are always so great to the community and everything you do. We appreciate it. I feel like I can speak for everybody in the room when I say that we appreciate it. So we've already heard from Corey. Before we get started on learning about what exactly 230 is, why we should care about it, and so on, let's also take a second to hear from our two super exciting guests, featured speakers. Let's hear first from the wonderful Siri Dahl. Hi, Siri. So happy you're here.
Hello, very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm a veteran performer. I started out in 2012, and I'm also now known as being one of the most outspoken performers politically, and especially when it comes to censorship and stigma against sex workers. But yeah, I mean, I don't need to get into the details of my career. If anyone's curious, you can Google me.
We can Google you. It's absolutely true. But it is so important. It is absolutely important to be outspoken and use your voice. And we really, really appreciate it. And we're so glad you're here, Siri. Let's now hear from Alison Boden.
Well, hey, thanks, Dr. Chantal. And thanks to Siri, who is, well, I think actually everybody on the panel right now are FSC members. And we appreciate their membership because I am now the executive director of the Free Speech Coalition. And our job is to defend this industry from Tax 230. So very, very near and dear to my heart.
Yes, very near and dear to everybody's heart. If you're not already aware of the work that the Free Speech Coalition does, I invite you to check it out, to support them. The Free Speech Coalition has been around for decades, and I can say, as a person who has spent a lot of time learning about this industry, we would not be in the place that we are without the efforts of the Free Speech Coalition, without efforts from Alison, and without efforts from many people who have come before her. So it's very, very exciting and super important to be aware of the FSC. So let's kick it back to the topic at hand, and let's hear from Corey. Corey, in your most succinct and non-jargony way, can you explain to us what Section 230 is and why we should care about it, just to get us going?
Well, if I said no, that would kind of be like a pretty big mood killer. So I guess we can't go with no. But first, most importantly, congratulations to Alison. I am so excited about her becoming the new executive director of the Free Speech Coalition. I'm actually jumping out of the windows, screaming, excited, that sort of excitement level. That's as much energy as I can give it. I am really so happy that that's now happened. And of course, Siri, I can't thank you enough. I'm, obviously a massive fan of your everything that you say is truly a gift to this industry. And I hope that more people will realize how valuable you truly are to this industry. Now, Section 230, I've been asked to try to make it as brief as possible, which is a little bit difficult, but I'm going to do my absolute best. Section 230 is something that I've been screaming at the top of my lungs since I first got into the industry as being possibly the most important piece of United States law that we have with regard to the expansion, freedom, protection of an open internet. When I say that, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm saying is that Section 230, ultimately what it does, and in the cleanest way I can say it, is that the internet computer service provider, meaning whoever the website is, or whether they're a web host like MojoHost, whether you're a cam site, whether you're a tube site, whether you're a blog, whatever, the actual website operator can not be held liable for the speech of its users. And this is a massive thing, because I want you guys to think for a second that without Section 230, we wouldn't have a YouTube, we wouldn't have a Facebook, we wouldn't have a Twitter, because frankly, we wouldn't have a MojoHost, because who in their right mind would ever engage or get into a business where they could be potentially liable for whatever it is that some third party does or says. Now, of course, there are a few exceptions, of course, because that's how the law works. There's three big ones, one being copyright violations, the second being violations of federal criminal law, and the third big one is our newer one, which is FOSTA SESTA, that being sex work related materials, but we're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But getting back, Chantel, to your most basic question, Section 230, ultimately to me, it is my version, or the US law's version of free speech on the internet. It is what has allowed service providers, business operators to engage and allow for the freedom of exchange of information without having to be terrified that they're going to be sued out of existence by whomever or whatever related to that content that goes up.
So would you go so far as to say that Section 230, though, is especially important to our community, to the adult entertainment industry?
In my opinion, it's one of the cornerstones laws of our adult entertainment industry. We have Siri, here today, who later on is going to talk about the massive shift that we've seen from conventional production to performers going into business for themselves. But ultimately, when you look at what our industry has really transformed into, which is the independence of performers worldwide, which is the freedom of performers to go and do whatever they want, the freedom to communicate with the adult industry's fan base. It's something that people forget about all the time, that without the users, we all wouldn't be here. And ultimately, without Section 230, you wouldn't have these platforms, because again, they would be too terrified of getting sued out of existence rather than having this availability. So anytime we hear about attacks on Section 230, everyone's radar should be going up full attention, especially in this business.
Right. So I was going to say, to reiterate, everybody should care, but we in particular should care. Now, I know we're going to get into the Earn It Act as we progress, but just to kind of give us a temperature of what's been going on with Section 230, what are some specific industry relevant attacks that have been happening? Because it is important to know that this is an onslaught, right? So this is a long game that's happening that we're dealing with here.
It's coming from all corners, Chantel, and this is something that unfortunately there's not enough talking about it, because look, the fact is that everyone in this business is busy right now. Everyone is busy promoting their products, creating content, creating ideas, launching their platforms, etc. And unfortunately, that oftentimes doesn't leave a lot of time to sit and read what's going on a lot in headlines and news, and as you described it, boring or long-winded legalese, or whatever you want to call it. But
legal stuff,
excuse me. You've got quite a few things going on that are extremely important. I mean, one, FOSTA SESTA cut a hole directly into the heart of Section 230. SESTA FOSTA is one of, in my opinion, one of the most unconstitutional, ridiculous things that we've seen come out in some time. The Woodhull Freedom Foundation is continuing its battle in terms of the constitutional challenge. There was recently a ruling that did not go the plaintiff's way, but as I understand it, appeals are, and all options are being considered right now. So I suspect we're not at the end of that war. But FOSTA SESTA was a direct attack, a direct cutthroat strike to the heart of Section 230. You also have to look at the pending Earn It Act, which Allison's going to talk about in a couple minutes, I'm sure. But then you also have to look at some of these decisions we're getting out of the judiciary. Now, historically speaking, when a internet service provider got sued, Section 230 was pretty much a pretty well certain thing. Motions to dismiss would be filed, and ultimately those motions would be successful. But now in the judiciary, we're starting to see some really scary stuff. We've got cases. We have one particular judge down in Alabama right now who, with all due respect of him, wrote an absolutely terrible decision that makes, frankly, no sense whatsoever and cuts again right into the heart and basically ignores everything that Section 230 stands for. So when you look at it, Chantel, you've got attacks coming from the legislative side, meaning FOSTA, SESTA, and now you have the judiciary, again, cases like we're seeing from this judge down in Alabama, who's directly ruling against Section 230 and disallowing Section 230 protection.
So jeopardy might be too strong of a word, like 230 is in jeopardy, but maybe it's not. I don't know. Let's jump to Alison. Now we have a bit of a context for why 230 is important and the fact that it is definitely under fire. What can you tell us about the Earn It Act and what's going on with that currently? Start with the basics.
Like Corey said, 230 is there to protect platforms from prosecution who aren't doing illegal things, like knowingly distributing what some call child pornography, but is more, I don't know, currently called child sex abuse material, CSAM, which is how I'll be referring to it. So internet companies are already required to report CSAM if they come across it, and they do. Ron Wyden, the senator from Oregon, reported that there were over 45 million reports to NCMEC in 2019, and NCMEC is the body that is supposed to take these reports and pass them along for investigation, but just a fraction of them were actually even investigated, and almost none really were prosecuted or convicted. So what Earn It Act is trying to do is, to be honest, instead of providing resources to investigate and stop CSAM, there are really religious extremists who are trying to, push an anti-porn agenda. The main folks behind all of, maybe not all of, but a lot of the anti-porn legislation you're seeing right now are NCOSE, NCOSE. They renamed themselves. You may know them better as Morality in Media if you're of a certain age. And, and quite honestly, their goal isn't to protect children, it's to end porn, but protecting children is an easier sell. So you've seen recently, I'm sure anybody who's watching the news has noticed there's a lot of people trying to ban books, whether they're about race or talking about the existence of LGBT folks. It's that same push toward protecting the children that people are trying to get their conservative values legislated through. So CSAM in this case is sort of the Trojan horse they're trying to reach the goal of ending pornography through. So with the goal of ending porn, Earn It essentially is the SESTA FOSTA. And if you're familiar with the Texas anti-abortion law, SB 8, it's sort of rolled into one. So whereas FOSTA stripped 230 protections for anything related to sex work, Earn It is basically doing the same thing, but for child sexual content. The big things the bill does, there are a couple. So it creates this unelected commission that's going to decide on best practices that websites are going to have to use to combat child sexual exploitation and keep kids from seeing adult content. Of course, no one from our community is going to be included on that commission or have any input into it. The second thing it does is allows the federal government, as well as the individual governments of every single state, to prosecute however they see fit websites that don't comply with those best practices. The third thing is what makes it kind of similar to SB 8. And what it does is allows people, individuals, to sue any website if CSAM is ever uploaded to the platform, doesn't matter if it's taken down or even if it's blocked before it ever even reaches the public, by uploading that file and having it on your servers, there's a very good argument to be made that you have distributed and reproduced an image of child sexual abuse material. So that's the overall on Earn It.
And, you know, Allison, when you hear, it's incredible because when I hear you talking about it, obviously I've been reading about it for years, but then when I hear the words coming out of another human being's mouth, I think to myself, I truly can't believe like what these legislators are and what these lawmakers are actually, what the hell are they thinking? Because when you really start thinking about common sense and you start thinking about, hey, you know, what is it that they're trying to do here? You know, they can keep trying to claim this is all about protecting children. This is all about protecting children. But as you correctly stated, you know, a couple minutes ago, when you look back at SESTA FOSTA, has SESTA FOSTA actually helped? Hell no. And I'm so excited to hear about, you know, Siri's thoughts on that subject soon, because it's, you know, it's just mind-boggling. Chantel?
So it's very interesting. We can sit here and talk about how fucking ludicrous it is because the idea that anybody in our community is at all interested in CSAM is pretty ludicrous. And it is interesting too to think about organizations espousing some specific level of morality, and then at the same time leveraging something that's truly horrible, like child sexual abuse, as Allison put it, a Trojan horse to really attack sexual expression amongst consenting adults. So as agitating as it is to think about what's really going on here, we all know it. We all get it. We all understand. But that doesn't matter because not everybody gets it. And this is the thing that is important. So we need to think about what actually, because this has teeth, this has legs, just like SESTA FOSTA. Nobody thought, oh gosh, and this and that. And then all of a sudden, guess what happened? So although we understand the reality of the situation, we have to remember that we live in a world where our understanding of reality is not necessarily common sense knowledge, right? So we have to approach this issue thinking about that it is in fact a very real threat, and this logic is landing with people. It lands for some, as we yoga people like to say. So Allison, if the Earn It Act were to pass, what actual real things would we see happening to our community, meaning the legal, commercial, adult content production on the internet space?
Yeah, I mean, that's the real question, right? So any platform that allows user-generated content of any kind, pictures, videos, would, you know, the owners, the operators would face prison time and or massive lawsuits for knowingly reproducing or distributing CSAM. Problem is, there's no guidance in this law that says what does knowing entail. So the biggest concern that we have is that platforms might knowingly distribute content that they think is legal, or they might knowingly do it, and then it could later be identified as CSAM and they would end up liable. Or that idea I mentioned before of sort of as a file is uploaded to a website, now you have reproduced CSAM. Or even, let's say, a moderator on a website sends something they think could be CSAM to a support team to review it. That could constitute distribution. And I think that while those things are very scary and people will argue, well, no one would possibly interpret it that way, fine. At the very least, the vagueness that, you know, is purposely built into this bill is going to open the door to thousands of potential lawsuits and potentially, you know, overzealous prosecutions. So anyone who's ever been involved in, you know, a legal situation knows, and if you don't, I can confirm that it is true that it is not uncommon for defendants who are even successful at getting a case dismissed in the very early stages to end up paying at least 100,000, if not many hundreds of thousands, in legal expenses and fees just to get a case dismissed that is completely without merit.
The Section 230 defenses, the defense cases, Allison, are, I've been involved in, I don't even know how many now. The costs are astronomical. And the whole reason of having a Section 230 was to prevent that from happening, so that ultimately, someone or an innocent service provider wouldn't be litigated out of existence. And so, when Chantel asks, like, when she says, well, what could, we potentially be facing? I think to myself, well, okay, I represent platforms all over the world. And if my platform clients come to me and they say, okay, Corey, now we have this Earn It Act, what the hell are we going to do? We're going to have a serious conversation about what the new risks are. Because ultimately what the Earn It Act will do is it will change the game, my friends. And it is something that I am, I've been screaming at the top of my lungs for years. And I'm so thrilled that, Allison is really, charging with the FSC on this, because guys, this is seriously one of the most serious attacks we've got going. This is an ill thought out law. And also, Allison, I'm not sure if you mentioned it earlier, but ultimately the Earn It Act as it's proposed has this basically commission of what's going to be, government people that are party aligned, of course, that are going to be the ones that ultimately decide what it is that a service provider has to do to quote unquote earn Section 230. And to me, this stinks of politics to high hell, because ultimately you're going to get, however many people it is on this board making rules that are all going to be politically motivated. And, this is an absolute horrendous idea that as far as I see will lead in absolute nothing but disaster. But that's, just my 2 cents.
Let's pull back here for 1 second, because I have a question about impact, and a question that we're sort of dancing over it, but I really want to drill this in. So Corey or Allison, whomever, and then after they answer this, I actually want to segue over into Siri. What will this do for surveillance? And when I say surveillance, I mean like chit-chatting and talking and texting. And then once one of you tells us what's going to happen there, I would love to hear, Siri, what you think that is going to impact, or how it's going to directly impact the performer population. So what is Earn It going to do to surveillance, first and foremost?
So facing untold hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in liability and or criminal prosecution, which I don't think I have to explain why that's frightening. Websites who are now looking down the barrel of this are going to have to make some really difficult decisions, and probably we're going to see bans on sex-related content of any kind. I mean, that's, I don't see any way around it. At this point, there are almost no mainstream platforms left where sexual expression is even allowed. And so to lose those would be devastating. But I think to address your question, Dr. Chantal, the ways that this bill wants to filter content and make sure that nothing is CSAM, well, that involves those big platforms scanning all of your content. Anything you have in the cloud is on someone else's computer, and that person now has a very good reason to look through it and see whether that could get them in trouble. So any kind of communications that you're having, you are now going to be surveilled to make sure that you are not using them to further CSAM. And what that means ultimately is that we lose encryption, because you can't surveil communications that are encrypted. So it's a particularly frightening future.
So surveillance, Siri, maybe using this delightfully terrifying notion of surveillance as a jumping off point, what is this going to do? Or how do you see this impacting performers, creators, independent producers, people who like to share pictures of their cats on the internet? What's going to happen?
I am one of those people who really
I
enjoys
know.
sharing pictures of my cats on the internet, and it's, you know, yeah. Okay. Don't mention cats around me. It throws off my train of thought. I go into like cat mom mode and I can't think about anything else all of a sudden. So I voluntarily had to delete my own 700K follower Instagram account about a week ago. And I mean, that's a fun thing to bring up because it is directly related to what we're already all experiencing in the porn industry as far as being censored by mainstream platforms for content that is often not even like overtly sexual. It's just that the hand of censorship is so heavy now, and it will get much, much, much worse if the Earn It Act passes. I mean, the things that I talk to when I talk to like my civilian friends, and especially, you know, I really hammer it in when I talk to my friends in the industry as well, is like, we will like, yes, we will lose platforms that we make money on, but I think the very first thing we will lose is the ability to market ourselves on platforms like Twitter. Most sex workers have already lost at least one Instagram account, or had it, you know, severely restricted to the point that it's like kind of useless. But Twitter has historically been a little more friendly to the adult community. And I have no doubt that if, you know, if Section 230 is totally gutted, like we won't be able to post anything risque on Twitter anymore. We might not even be able to link to our websites anymore on Twitter. Like, who knows? But they're going to drop us like a hot potato because they're not going to want to deal with the liability. And that's going to be the case for just about every free, like, mainstream social media platform. Like, I tell a lot of sex workers that use Reddit to drum up traffic. Like, Reddit's going to they're going to ban sexual content. And then when it gets into like paid platforms, you know, I am an independent model. I don't have an agency. I haven't had an agency for years and years. I fly out to California every month and I do studio shoots, but the majority of my income is made on user-generated content platforms like OnlyFans. That's literally 85-90% of my income any given month. It enables me to live out in Kentucky instead of have to live in LA, which is fantastic for me and my mental health. But if Earn It Act passes, then I know I'm one of like hundreds, if not thousands, of sex workers who make my money online, and I will be forced into a position where I have to make really hard choices about how am I gonna adjust to this new paradigm and like continue to make a living. Like, I mean, I'll definitely make a far less good, I'll make a lot less money. I know that because it'll just immediately like cripple all these websites. But I'm gonna have to like really, really like try to figure out how I'm gonna make up the difference. And, you know, that's me saying that as a performer who's in a pretty good position to go work more for studios if I want to. I have a position of privilege that a lot of sex workers do not have. And one of the scariest things about this, just like it was with FOSTA SESTA, is that attacks like this, it's like this really takes away our ability as content creators to work for ourselves, to not have to depend on trying to get studio work. You know, it also keeps, for content creators who have done in-person forms of sex work, with, you know, that might actually put some people who aren't like in a center of production like LA or Miami or something. It's like, oh gee, if I can't make money on OnlyFans anymore, how am I going to make money now? Like, they might start doing full service or like forms of sex work that might be a little more dangerous. Like, so it really is very, very, very bad. Like, I can't really overstate how bad it is. I wake up every day feeling stressed about just the possibility that the Earn It Act might pass. And that even if it doesn't, it's like these attacks are not going to stop. So, I mean, my like life mission lately has been talking about this as much as I can to civilians that I know, like my friends who are not in the porn industry, but also really talking to people in the industry about it, because I don't see enough performers talking about this. I don't see performers talking to their fans about it, which is weird to me. It's like, I talk to my fans about it all the time. They're actually pretty well educated because I won't ever shut up about it, but
I actually, you know, Siri, when you say that, I think about how performers such as yourself, your followers, the people that you know, in essence, support you, who pay for your living and so forth, they want to talk to you. They want to communicate with you. That's what adult entertainment has really transitioned into, where, you know, performers have to spend so much more time now than they ever did talking to fans, actually getting to know their fans, communicating with them, and et cetera. And I think to myself, it's like, if you take these available technologies away that give your fans the ability to communicate with you, like, so not only are the platforms potentially going to be a loss of income, but your secondary loss of income, your direct fans and so forth, how are they going to get in touch with you? How are they going to, you know, continue to talk if you know,
email, I guess.
Oh, okay. That's I don't
Written
That sounds like a fucking
correspondence.
nightmare.
see, and
It
that,
can be used in pin files.
well, for, you know, when you hear from someone like Siri, who you've watched have, you know, a truly just absolutely incredible career, and she's, you know, become frankly one of the most famous, you know, industry faces. And then you think about people though who are very much trying to be like you, Siri. They might be new to the industry and what have you, and they're trying to develop their following, and they're trying to, you know, jump on Instagram, and they're trying to get on Twitter. But like you said a few minutes ago, Siri, I mean, here you are getting pushed back because you're still losing accounts, you know, on a weekly basis because of, you know, whatever a scrutiny, you know, these companies are creating. I think of like, man, like, just imagine if you got the Earn It Act around, and then companies legitimately have to worry about, well, shit, I could get sued because of a conversation that Siri's having with one of her fans or consumers or what have you, that we've never seen, that we haven't heard, that we don't know anything about. That's some scary stuff there, Siri.
Yeah.
It's interesting to sort of pull it back a little bit, because I don't want to overcharacterize, but it is, if you think about SESTA FOSTA and that kind of making sex work much more dangerous for people who were doing like full service in person, things like that, pushing people back out into different ways of communicating, let's just say. Isn't it interesting to think about this idea of the Earn It Act actually sort of infantilizing performers and content creators in many ways, because we are currently living in a time where performers can really have full ownership and autonomy, you know, in terms of work and everything. Like, the technology is available. The idea of the old studio model, or like, I gotta live in LA so I can shoot. I mean, you yourself just said you can commute, you can do this, you can choose to work both methods or modes if you want. But if this happens, then now all of a sudden that ability is taken away, not only from you as an individual, but from all creators. Now all of a sudden you're going to be out seeking a producer. And that, if that idea is not something that doesn't light a fire under everyone's ass, I would think the idea of having to go back to an only studio model where content is created in that old school method. I mean, everything has its goods and bads, but if everything is funneled back to that removal of autonomy from the creator community is alarming. No?
It
Yes?
is.
Maybe?
Yes. Oh, it's incredibly alarming. And it goes even deeper than just on the individual level of like performers being able to, you know, survive and thrive running their own business, you know, making their own content that they sell on like platforms such as like OnlyFans and etc. that host user generated content. But it also has a lot of other implications as far as like culturally. Like, we know that porn has a massive impact on our culture. We also know, or I this is, I don't have like empirical evidence, I haven't done an official study on this, but to me there's a very clear line connecting the popularity of independent platforms where models are selling their content and the growing acceptance in the porn industry and at large of queer people, trans people, performers of color. Like, we've been seeing huge like movements to like, I mean, Brazzers shot a trans model in a scene that they sold as like a regular boy girl scene without like, you know, like all the like wording about like, oh, this is trans, like, which is a big step. So it's actually like we're seeing a lot more normalization of things that used to be really, really edged out onto the periphery of the industry. And the main fucking reason that we're seeing that is because these models are making a good living on their own, selling their own content. And it's like, it's having the proof of saying like, look, there's a market for me. And maybe, you know, this big company didn't think that I was marketable 4 or 5 years ago, but look at me now. Like I'm in the top like 0.1% or whatever on OnlyFans. Like there's a lot of models that can say that of all different body types and genders. And like, we're actually seeing things open up more. And I know that that's good ultimately also for all of our fans who are watching our porn, and like people's minds are being opened by different types of content. And if we lose the option for performers to make a living in their own right, you know, and only to depend on studios, then studios will go back to playing it safe and only hiring models that they are sure will sell, which will mean the same old people that we all like the same stuff, you know? Right. So for me, it runs a lot deeper. It's gonna be, everyone's gonna have to compromise their art in this industry also. Right. And that's sad.
Yeah. It is sad. And it is also an interesting thing that we don't really hear discussed very often is this whole idea of the health and viability of our community is actually indicative of the health and viability of the wider world. Everybody thinks about the little porn bubble, like somehow people don't interact with fans or don't have real like outside lives or whatever. Obviously, that's not true. So this idea that what is happening within this community then bleeds out and has a positive impact or a liberating impact or a normalizing impact, however you want to see it, and it obviously shifts. But the idea that we don't even think about that is, we don't talk about it. You're right, absolutely. And it is important to think about not only what this could do to our community, but what the impact it will have then on the wider world. So what do we do to stop this from happening? Well, Corey, say something, and then we'll go back to tactics.
Yeah, before you get to tactics, it's just you know, you said something and Siri said something that it's a point of frustration and anger for me, because you know, the government wants to run around and they want to, you know, continue walking down the street with their victory trombone, celebrating FOSTA SESTA and talking about how much safer it is for sex workers out there now. And I'm just going to tell you something, because Siri made a point, and you know, she was spot on, but it's something that needs to be expanded on, Siri, and that is the fact that is a complete falsity. I represent large companies. I represent studios, content producers. I also represent performers. I represent sex workers all over the United States and all over the world. And I can tell you that every single sex worker that I've spoken to, every single one, has told me that FOSTA SESTA has not made it safer. And to the contrary, it has actually made things more dangerous, because by taking away a lot of third-party services that, quite frankly, we're sharing information with law enforcement. And if you talk to law enforcement on the flip side, law enforcement will tell you that they're frustrated with FOSTA SESTA because they've lost a lot of the cooperation they were getting to actually save real victims of sex trafficking. And that to me is the disgusting part of this whole ordeal and the shame of it. And it frustrates me, Siri, because I have seen and I have heard so many you know, people kind of say that, you know, the same thing, that it's like, yeah, how the hell did FOSTA SESTA help my life? And what did they have to do? They had to return to what? Print ads in the back of classified ads, pimping, and other forms of you know, frankly, crime to make ends meet. And this is where it really frustrates me, because I think it's sickening to see people running around singing that this is some sort of a win, because when the chips fall, I actually do believe that the facts will show, and the facts will show that it did not make the world safer. It did not actually end up helping victims of sex trafficking. That ultimately it made things worse, and it actually made things more dangerous. But Siri, I mean, I'm assuming you probably heard the stories more than I do, because you probably talking to more performers than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard total horror stories from performers and folks who do all different forms of sex work about the effects of FOSTA SESTA. And FOSTA SESTA was passed and went into effect during a window of time when I was retired from performing. So I didn't have the experience of being like actively performing in like around 2018 and feeling that change over myself. But because I started out in 2012 and I was actively performing for a couple years and then retired, then ended up coming back, it's like I do have a comparative sense of like, what was the industry like in 2013, long before FOSTA SESTA, and what is it like now? And it is a drastic difference. And I mean, the biggest difference that I noticed immediately when I, came back and started getting back on socials and stuff a couple of years ago was just on social media generally. It's like if I am doing it doesn't, I mean, it applies, I think it's most challenging for full service sex workers. They've got to like blur their faces out completely and stuff to get around like surveillance online. But even for someone like me, it's like, all I want to do is just link to my damn OnlyFans, and I can't do that on Instagram. Like, they won't let me. I can't even have a link tree in my bio on Instagram because that's thought of as a sign of a sex worker. So it's like, it's just like, the intention to me clearly behind laws like this, same thing with Earn It Act, is to make it pretty much as impossible as it can be to make a living in sex work.
To suppress free speech. That is what it comes down to, Siri. And I'm so happy that you said that, because I think that, frankly, more people need to hear what you just said, listen to it, and actually do something about it.
Speaking of doing something about it, again, we are 100%, to go back to what Alison said, that we are dealing here with a Trojan horse where we have a little dangly thing that's supposed to be for something, but really it's for something else. So as we move through this conversation, what can we be doing? Because this is the thing, as much as I love our industry, as much as I love our community, we also sometimes, we're busy, like Corey said, and stuff's happening, and what do we need to do? Where can we channel our efforts? Because this is an all hands on deck situation, and we all need to be aware of it, and we all need to participate. Alison, what can we be doing? Start us off.
So at this moment, this bill is stalled, but the fact that it came literally out of nowhere, it was reintroduced after last session, and was already in committee, about to leave committee within a number of days, and no one saw it coming. Free Speech Coalition has federal lobbyists on the Hill, and all indications were that this thing just came out of absolutely nowhere. So I'm happy that it seems to be stuck in committee, but I have no illusions that it's dead or even sleeping. It could just be waiting for its opportunity, especially after the midterms. So while our lobbyists are keeping close track of Earn It and the other 230 attacks, we're in danger of running out of funding for them at FSC. And so joining and becoming a member and building that power base is obviously what I'm going to encourage you to do. But I'm also going to encourage this group, especially because this is industry folks, do what Siri does. Talk to your fans. Make it clear that this doesn't just affect you or generic sex worker they don't know about. This will affect them too. Their Google Drive is about to get unencrypted and searched. They will no longer be able to send dick pics to people on OkCupid, which I have, multiple feelings about. But this is
that
really
subreddit that they like for the titty photos, that'll be gone.
Exactly. You are not going to get those return photos. And so I think that in addition to keeping an eye on this and being very ready to act as soon as we hear anything stirring, so make sure you're on the Free Speech Coalition email list, obviously, because we're going to be keeping our eye to, on what's happening. We will be able to tell you exactly when things are going on, but in the meantime, talk to people. Take a page out of Siri's book. Make sure that the people in your life, whether they're civilians or not, know what's going on and are ready to fight back.
Very good advice. Supporting the FSC. The FSC, back to the busy comment, the FSC is fully, this is the FSC's job. The FSC is not too busy to do this because this is what the FSC does, right? So that is important. Going back to the idea of communicating with one's fans, this is sort of a question. I hear little things and I don't really know how to address this. Maybe Siri, you do. So you're obviously really vocal in communicating with your fans, but what advice or suggestion could you, I mean, because there's so much power in the performer community. There's such a platform, such an audience. I mean, fans live and die by their favorite performer. I mean, all the way. If somebody maybe feels like, oh, it's going to wreck the fantasy if I talk about this real issue, or maybe just doesn't feel like getting political, do you have any suggestions, anything that somebody could do? Or just what are your thoughts there? You know, how can people work it in maybe?
Yeah, before I will answer that, but before I answer that, I want to say that what I personally would love to see is if performers, obviously only if you're in a position financially where it's something you can entertain the idea of, but I would love to challenge as many performers as possible to look, it's tax season. We all just probably paid our taxes from last year. So you're thinking like, you know what you made in a year, and like, what if you donated to FSC's lobbying fund 1% of that amount, or 0.5% even? Like if even like half the performers that are active did that, that would make a massive difference. And it's like, we can all do that together, like, and also be a member of FFC. But you can be a member and then also donate more to the lobbying fund on top of that. So I just want to say that I would absolutely love to see that happen.
But we know that's the game that's happening. So I mean, think about that level of support there, and then think about supporting our community, your own community, right? The question was, if somebody maybe wants to talk about these issues with their fans, or maybe they don't know how, like, just what is a tip or a trick or a thing, like, be Den Mother Siri right now for a minute and give me something.
There's different approaches. Every performer is going to have a different like persona or relationship that they approach with their fans. And I'm very, very real. I don't even really have a persona. So like, but I mean, really, to me, the easiest, most like obvious like way to respond to that or to bring it up with your fans is like, hey, you're following me on like Instagram or whatever, right? Like, I know you like to see me, you like to look at me. There is a battle taking place in United States politics where, like, if the Earn It Act wins, for example, like, you might not really see a whole lot of me anymore. So I already know you like to see me. It's just like, it's like you support me in so many ways. Support me in this way too. I would like it if you did that. I think a lot of performers do have that like fear of like, oh, if I bring up politics, like it'll drive people away. And it's like, well, yeah, if there's a certain way you can do it that will drive people away. I know, because I've done it on purpose to drive away people I didn't want following me, but like, you don't have to bring it up that way. You can, it can be something that's very like casual, like, hey, fun fact of the day, if you didn't know, this is a bill that's like currently being like in process. I don't know what the term is for it legally, but yeah, like, this is a bill, and like, we probably don't want this to pass because here's what could happen if it did, and like, it would really affect me on a personal level, and it would affect your ability to enjoy my content. So it's something you should care about too. And it can come from a place of genuine caring and like connecting with your fans, and it doesn't have to seem like a hard political sell, because at the end of the day, it's really not. It's about us just keeping our jobs and protecting ourselves. And I think our fans will totally be on board with that.
There will, right. a lot of people, and there are people out there that will say, look, I haven't reached a point in my career where I really can donate anything because, I might have too much going on in my life, whatever. I always encourage those people and I say, that doesn't mean you can't be involved. And that doesn't mean that you can't be involved. One thing with the FSC is that if you watch in their newsletter, when they do different calls for group meetings and community meetings, and there's all different names for them right now, they're always inviting performers and people in the industry to attend, whether you're a member or not. I mean, look, money obviously talks in this world, but ultimately they would prefer to have someone involved versus not involved at all. So I hope that, people out there don't think that, if you don't or can't afford, a couple bucks, that you shouldn't be participating, because you should be. And Siri said something a second ago also that's really important. A lot of this stuff, for those of you that follow me on Twitter or are members of my site or have heard me speak before, you guys know that I'm always trying my best to keep people updated. And, I'm trying to get you guys the information that I believe is the most, important stuff. There's like all industries, there's always all the drama out there, and you got to pull all that and push that aside to get to what are real actual issues that are going to affect us. And so I encourage you guys, make sure to follow the FSC, follow me, follow people like Siri, because these are ultimately industry leaders who we want to share information. We have no interest in keeping something secret, like, we have this little tidbit that's about to hit. Like, that's not what we're trying to do here. And so I always encourage people to reach out when you have questions and make sure you're talking about this stuff. One thing that we didn't really talk about, and Alison knows my view on this, is I also always tell people that you can always be outreaching to your Congress people, your lawmakers. And one thing about them is they are all on social media now. And they actually, believe it or not, whether it's them personally or whether it's their people that they have around them answering, they are paying attention to what you're saying. And I've been saying for a long time, you should be calling them out, and you should be telling them, hey, so-and-so, are you going to support the Earn It Act? Because if you're going to support the Earn It Act, I am not going to vote for you. That is what politicians are looking for. They give a shit about votes, and they are concerned about votes. And it is so important that you get the message out there. They're like, listen, I'm not going to support you. And another thing, that if you get their attention, and I always try to remind people of this, Chantel, is I say, remind those politicians that, as they're all happy and go lucky and loving to spread their information and their campaigns and asking for money on Twitter and all that stuff, remind them that those platforms wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Section 230. And they wouldn't have the ability to reach all their constituents like they couldn't do 20 years ago, because there wasn't a Twitter and an Instagram and all the other methods that politicians now take advantage of to reach their constituents. They need to be reminded of that. And I think they've forgotten and lost sight of the fact that their ability to reach those constituents is there because of Section 230. So I'm sorry, I'm done ranting, but
politicians often lose sight of things. As you said, Corey, giving of one's time is often the most invaluable resource, because it is something that is, you can't put a price on it. So as Corey said, giving time is also fantastic. Speaking of time, I like to be mindful of everybody's time. So we are about out of time. Alison, 1 minute sum up, and where can people find you? Contact information you feel like sharing.
Sure. I think the 1 minute sum up is truly that we're, as an industry, and sexuality and other marginalized people of all kinds are under attack in a way that we have not been in, frankly, the 20 years I've been in porn. It's frightening. And now is the time for us to work together. I know that getting porn people to work together, from my own experience, we're a herd of cats. But I do feel like right now it's more important than ever to think about what we have to lose and do what we can to work together to fight these things off. If you want to find me, freespeechcoalition.com is a great place to start. Our Twitter is at FSC Army, and feel free to email me directly, Allison@freespeechcoalition.com.
Thank you so much, Alison. It was wonderful having you here. Siri, 1 minute sum up, and how can people find you?
1 minute sum up. If you're a performer, if you're any performer or not, but especially performers, because we have a fan base and we have the extra influence in the industry, but please talk about this. Please talk about it with your coworkers, your civilian friends, your mom. I was talking to my mom staying with me right now. I was literally talking to my mom about the Earn It Act. Talk to everyone you know about it. Bring it up. Make sure people are aware of the actual effects that this might have. Join FSC, donate to FSC if you can. And you guys can follow me or find me online at the Siri Dahl. That's my username on Instagram and on Twitter. And my like website is just siridahl.com.
Thank you so much for being here.
DAHL.
Yes, fancy doll spelling. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Corey,
Thank
any
you for having
closing
me.
thoughts, and how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, first and most important, I have to thank Alison and Siri, because I mean, frankly, Siri is someone who I've participated with panels before, and I think she is an absolute amazing asset to this industry. She is brilliant, and for those of you that you know aren't following her and not listening to what she has to say, shame on you. For you performers out there that are looking for someone to look up to and looking for someone who did it right in this business and you can learn from, she is a fantastic person to be looking for that guidance. Alison is someone that I've been working with for quite a number of years now, and now that she's in the big leather seat at the top of the Free Speech Coalition, I'm even, frankly, not to sound condescending, but I'm extremely proud of her. Alison and I are fellow board members on Pineapple Support, where we work together on a regular basis, and she's brilliant. And I truly can't thank Alison and Siri enough for being here. Chantel, of course, to you, you're amazing, and thank you, of course, for being here. If anyone wants to reach out to me, you can get a hold of me on Twitter. It's pretty easy. It's @myadultattorney, or you can reach out online. Again, myadultattorney.com. It's pretty easy to find me. You can also, I have a membership site for you performers out there, adult.law. We created it just for you performers, and we offer educational videos and tools and all sorts of stuff to help you as you go through your careers. This is the first of what's going to be a regular series. We are not going to stop with this one. I'm very proud of the fact that Chantel and I put a lot of thought into this when we decided we were going to do this. We are doing another one. We're doing something fun next month at XBiz in Miami. We're actually going to be doing one of these live in person and broadcasting it at the same time. So we're really looking forward to that. But again, I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for people like Chantel, Alison, and Siri. I'm here to help all of you. If there's anything I can ever do for any of you, please contact me. Feel free to reach out. And again, of course, with regards to the FSC, join if you haven't already. I'm a member. I've been a member for a long time, actually. Back when they were giving real certificates, Alison, but no, I'm not trying to push her into that again. But thanks again, and please, thank you all for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you so much. This about wraps up our first episode, but definitely not our last. I want to take a minute or a moment to thank again XBiz, our exclusive media sponsor, as well as Mojo Host. Thank you so much. It is through support within our community that we're able to do these things. Please, 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 out there, anybody who's listening, take your position on this earth seriously. We are all here, and we are all in the same gang. We are all on the same side. Our community is so diverse, and it can be so volatile. And at the same time, we are in this together. No effort is too small. No effort is too great. We need all hands on deck. We need you all. Thank you so much again. I'm Dr. Chantel Tibbles, and we've really enjoyed our time here today. Thank you.